2, 12, 13, and 14. Esther 2. Okay, so let's read that. Now when every maid's turn was come to go in to the king Ahasuerus, after that she had been 12 months according to the manner of the women, for so were the days of their purification accomplished, to wit, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with sweet odors, and with other things for the purifying of the woman. Then thus came every maid unto the king, whatsoever she desired was given her to go with her out of the house of women unto the king's house. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the woman, to the custody of Shasahagus, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name. So let's see what is actually going on there. And one of the things that had to happen first was they had to be purified for 12 months. Now, I'm sure that the purification process wasn't just here, take these vitamins and move on. They had to do certain things, and they had to go through, certain types of rituals. And it says Persia is one of the many countries famous for its aromatic perfumes and ancient customs for the preparation of brides, including ritualistic baths, plucking of the eyebrows, and painting of the hands and feet with henna, facial makeup, and application of a beautifying paste all over the body, meant to lighten the color of the skin and remove spots and blemishes. So there was a lot of things that they had to kind of go through, because I'm sure that the king didn't want somebody really dumb, but he definitely wanted somebody really good looking. And that's why when he put out the decree that all the single women, should try out for the beauty contest, so to speak, they were able to sort through the lesser, non-desirable ones, and then bring in the more desirable ones for this preparation. So the other reason which somebody had postulated here was that the lengthy time for preparation was to tell if the woman had been pregnant upon coming into the harem, so that the king would not be charged with fathering a child that was not his. So you had to give it a couple of months at the very least, and they said that purification process was broken down into two. It was the first 6 months and then the second 6 months. So some guy named Matthew Poole says that the oils and perfumes were necessary because the bodies of men and women in those hot countries did of themselves yield very ill sense, if not correctly qualified by art. So he says they didn't look good, they didn't smell good. So they had to go through this ritual. So fortunately, the only good news, the two parts of it, one is that they got to be pampered for a year. And they got to live in a place, from our perspective, it's still probably third world life, but they were given the best things to help them, get through.
Did they have to stay, the ones that weren't chosen?
What's that?
Did they have to stay, the ones
Yes.
that weren't chosen?
Yeah, because we're going to see something here about what was going on during this time.
And this was all just for one night at the king.
Yes. So in this verse, unlike the first verse where it said that she pleased him, in this verse, it says that she went in the evening and left in the morning. I don't think they were there playing cards overnight. We know what they were doing. And at that point, they consummated a marriage. And that was, she now belonged to him. Whether he chose her or not to be the queen was another story. So, unfortunately for the 399 who lost, they were banished to the harem and were there where they stayed, wife or the concubine of the king, but rarely, if ever, saw him afterwards, and they were never free to marry another man, essentially living as a perpetual
That's so
widow.
sad.
So the good news was they got pampered for a year. The bad news is only one of them was going to get picked. And as we see in this book, it wasn't the luck of the draw, it was God's hand was in this by allowing her to be the best looking. Now, one thing I noticed about this is kind of a little bit of a side note. When we think, like when I was younger, I used to think, wow, Jesus, he was God. He must have been the best looking guy. He was the most ripped out of all the people out there. But you know what? The Bible always makes mention of these godly men, and of course, Jesus being the most of it, but David as well, said that there was not anything spectacular about their appearance. There was nothing really to look at. But yet, what does he say about Satan? He said, Satan appears as an angel of light. Now, my thinking that I kind of put together is that sometimes really good looks can be a curse as opposed to a blessing. Now, in this case, she needed her looks to get her through the door, and then she needed other things to help her. So there was a couple of things that stood out that in all my reading of these people that write these things didn't comment on. So I'll comment on that. So after she was done with the six months of the sweet odors and things of the purifying, it says that every maid came to the king, whatsoever she desired was given to her, to go with her out of the house of the women into the king's house. So your turn is coming up. Next week on Tuesday, you're going to go see the king. What do you want? You make your request of what it is you want. Now, I think that what they were saying was, what do you want to wear? How do you want to do your hair? What kind of shoes do you want to put on? I'm going to go see the king barefoot, that kind of stuff. And do you want any other, do you want to wear some kind of jewelry? Whatever you want, you tell us what you want and you can have it. Sky's the limit. There doesn't seem to be any limit. And in the, we'll see in the next set of verses that this is what she did. So they were given the opportunity because I think in some cases they had to show their beauty in different ways. And some, I don't think women today are any different than women back then. And that is that some of them have, self, what do you call it? They're self-conscious about certain things. I have a mole and I want to hide the mole, so I need extra makeup to put on my mole. Or I have split ends on my hair and I really need them cut, but it would probably be better if maybe I put it in a French braid. I don't know if they had French braids.
Now you're pretty good at this, Jeff.
What's that?
You're pretty good at
All
this.
the,
I am.
all the
Hey,
pretty
listen,
stuff.
Listen, I have 7 daughters and a wife. I know all about this stuff. As a matter of fact, my
I
girls,
like when he was doing this with their hair.
Yeah. my girls will tell you that I know how to braid their hair better than most. And I even mentioned to Christina, there's a lot of other things, being in a big family that, not just so much about the beauty aspects of it, but, I can fold fitted sheets better than anyone. And she'll attest to that. Not only better, but faster. So,
Bringing mine in.
Yeah, but I'll bring mine and show me how.
That's hard.
I got it down to a
It's
science.
hard.
Bringing it in.
Come over, I'll show you how to fold it right up. As a matter of fact, it's when I get done with them and you put them in the closet, you can't even tell, is that a flat sheet or a fitted sheet? Because I got them perfect. Yeah, I'm very particular about how things are in my closet.
Wow.
We'll have to bring one in.
All my towel seams are all facing the same way, the main fold in one direction, and But I'm not obsessive because I don't care if the kids knock all the towels on the floor and they throw them back on the shelf. I don't go in there and refix them. So I'm not obsessive and compulsive about that. But women are like that, and so sometimes they want some extra things and they would ask for extra things. And my impression is that once you ask for it, it's yours to keep. So whatever it was you got, since you may not be the one who gets picked, you get to keep all this stuff. So the idea was that she was going to go in and first impressions count, and she had to go before the king before she gets to perform, and we all know what that means. But before she gets to perform, she has to look good. She's got to look good and she's got to smell good. Because if the king, if she walks in and he goes, that's not my type, next, that doesn't really work. And I think that if that happened with any of these 400 women, the eunuch would be in trouble. Why did you pick that? You know what I like in women, you know. And you know, listen, it was the nation of Persia. They've been around a long time. You know, a lot of history of how things go there. And you know, there's a lot of things that go on in those pagan nations, you know, that they accentuate the other stuff. But I just thought it was interesting that he says whatever was desired was to be given to her. And then when they were done, that next morning when they got up, it was, you're out. And then they would go into another house. They didn't return back to the same house. So the women who went to be with the king did not have a chance to interact and say to the women that were in the first house and saying things like, well, you know, let me tell you what he likes and what he doesn't like, and by the way, don't put your hair up because he hates it. They can't, there's no interaction between the two. This woman is now married, she's in the other house, and I'm wondering if they had to build a new house for 400 women, or they had rooms for all of those people. That's a lot of people to take care of. And listen, the good thing is that they were taken care of the rest of their life. It's not like they were banished, because it does say they went into the second house, and the chamberlain got to keep track of them and take care of them after that. And then they became the concubine of the king. So now, remember I was saying a couple of weeks ago that I had this problem with them going in to see the king, and everybody was like, well, you know, if Esther went and saw the king, he could have killed her. I think that comes from this verse. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and she were called by name. Well, maybe they're applying that to everyone that was in that group of women, because I don't understand why the queen would not have access to the king except when he summoned her. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I'm trying to, it's hard to find out about the culture of another people back then, because you get both sides of every story. So I'm still looking into that to see what I can find about why they would say that. So those were the interesting points that came out of it. And at this point, by the way, they consummated the marriage as any other marriage would be, and now she belonged to him. So in this verse, there's no ambiguity that she came in the evening and left in the morning. So we just want to be clear, it is not like the other verse that said, and she pleased him. And like I said, I was very surprised that 9 Bible commentators got that wrong. And they said, well, she pleased him in the physical sense. And you got the wrong meaning. She didn't please, how do you please a eunuch? That's who she pleased. You had to please the eunuch, but it wasn't physically. You had to be everything the eunuch said, I know this is what the king was going to like. And I think that was in the beginning part of chapter 2. This is different. This is where she went in and consummated the marriage. So now, let's go to chapter 2 and go to verse 15, because now this is where Esther really comes on the scene. And it says in Esther 2, starting in 15, now in the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king. She required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed. And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. So Esther was taken unto the king Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast, and he made a release to the provinces and gave gifts according to the state of the king. So, we see that when Esther came on the scene, okay, tonight's your night, and as she walked from the house to the king's palace, everybody took notice of her, and it was very clear that And Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. Okay? That's a lot of people, I'm sure. And everybody took notice of her, so she must have been one very attractive woman. Not just in the looks, but in the way she carried herself. Now, women know other women. The way some women carry themselves is more attractive than other women, the way other women carry themselves. It's also, some of it has to do with the way they dress, but a lot of it has to do with their inner countenance. And I said to Christina once, I go, an ugly woman who is happy inside is much more attractive than a really good-looking woman who's miserable. Now, I'm sure it's the same for guys too, but I don't think women value appearance as much as men value appearance, you know. Which is why I don't understand Gabe. You know, it's like, what's there to look at? You know, the women are the ones that contain the beauty, and whether it's inward beauty or outward beauty, I don't see that in gay relationships. So I've always been, you just scratch your head. What is it that they see here?
Well, most gays seem to be very good looking, though.
What's that?
They seem to be very good looking guys. And that
They are, but they're not attractive in a way that a woman is attractive. Okay? You know, for instance, a woman who has long flowing hair. You see it, you know where you see it the most? On Fox News. You notice that every woman on Fox News, almost every one of them has long hair, and they always put it in front of them. Okay? What does a guy have that competes with that? Even if he's a good-looking guy, if a good-looking guy has long hair, he's a libertarian sort of talk.
They like Fabian.
What's that?
They like Fabian.
I don't get that either. I don't get long hair on a guy, and I don't think it makes a man attractive. Now, maybe I'm not one to judge, but I just don't think there's attractiveness that comes from a woman's countenance. And Esther obviously had that, because as she walked down there, everybody liked her.
What does that mean, even Esther's feast?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that too.
Where?
In 15, 18.
Then the king made a great feast unto all his princes and his servants, even Esther's feast. Oh, he had a feast. That's, you know, so you can have a wedding where you consummate it by having a physical act, or you can have a wedding with a wedding feast. So there's your wedding feast. So he picked someone, he's going to crown her at this point. And because he's going to crown her, he's going to make a feast, to make a ceremony out of it. I'm not just going to say, wow, I like you better than all the other ones so far, so hold on. Here's a crown. That's probably not how it went. They were very big into, pomp and circumstance. So they made a feast, and they made Esther's feast. And then he made a release to the province and gave gifts according to the state of the king. So, in other words, he was so happy that he found this woman, and he probably said, man, getting rid of Vesti was the best thing I ever did, best move I ever made. and then he picked her. So we get into this. She requested nothing but what Haggai, the king's eunuch, the custodian of the women, advised. So she was humble enough to say, I don't need anything. Okay? She didn't ask for anything extra or anything above and beyond. Whatever it is you want me to wear, that's what I'll wear, and that's all. And that was it. What's that?
She was low maintenance.
She was low maintenance, yep. And I'm sure a king loves a low maintenance woman. So even if you have a lot of money, nothing beats a low maintenance woman. So she had a humble spirit, and I'm sure that endeared her to Haggai, the king's eunuch. Now, I can understand guys. We like to be around good-looking women. This is a eunuch, so he's not affected by much of this stuff. But could you imagine the head eunuch? He's got to take care of 400 women, complaining, whining, and that's not fair. She got that and I didn't, or she got more face cream than I did. That's not right. And so you can just imagine the nonsense that went on there. So Esther's sitting in the corner, doing her thing. Maybe she's just filing her nails, watching the activities going on. you know, you can picture all of the things. Listen, the one thing I always say, human beings are the same today as they were then. So you picture 400 women who are in a beauty contest. As a matter of fact, there's a TV show that the kids like to watch where their kids compete. And I'm like,
But their kids what?
Their kids compete, like in beauty contests.
Oh.
I'll tell you what, some of these kids are hideously ugly. But just picture this going on, you know, if it were today. Picture this being today's type of thing that was happening. The one who stood out the most was the one who complained the least. You know what? Those three women over there in the corner are just annoying me to no end. But this one over here, she doesn't say a word. She doesn't speak unless she's spoken to. You know, maybe when she speaks, she's got, you know, poise and grace. She's smart. She speaks the language. She doesn't, you know, well today, she doesn't use foul language, and she doesn't use all the, you know, the things that we use today. Not emojis, but, you know, people use expressions, and they come up with all these different things, like, wait, my famous one of my kids, bro.
What?
They go, bro.
Oh, yeah.
One of my kids is laughing, not so much. So, I'm sure she wasn't like that. She was different than the rest, and it allowed her to stand out.
What about all the other men in the castle or wherever? Why didn't they, you know, share their women? Why didn't they put those people together?
Probably an insult to the king, I imagine.
He had, it looks that the ones that were in charge of the women were just eunuchs.
No, I'm just saying.
But the rest of them, the guards, no, these people were disciplined and trained, and, you know, you do your job, and you don't go around harassing the women that are there.
No, okay.
You know, don't even talk to them. And by the way, after they come out and go into the other house, now that's the king's concubine, don't be messing with her. You know, it's not like, man, he doesn't want her anymore, maybe I can have her. That didn't happen back in those days. So, so I think also that there was a slight bit of godliness that came through from Esther that, you know, made the king look toward her and say, hey, you know, I really like this woman. Because what did it say? It said he loved her more. It didn't say he liked her or he was enamored with her. It said he loved her. So we're going to take the word love for what it really means. And, you know, he was really, really stricken by her. So that's what it says. She obtained grace and favor in the sight more than all the other virgins. Because of the great favor that she obtained with the king, Esther was selected the queen of King Ahasuerus. So my only thought was, what number was she of the 400? Like, was she 222? Or was she 15? Or was she 398? And did he say to the last one, you're dismissed, I don't need you? Or did he select all 400 and say, you know what, you're number 250, but I still have another 250. I'm going to make you queen. I get the impression, since he made her queen, that he stopped his, I don't need the rest of them. Maybe she was the last one to go. I don't know. And I don't know if there's any way to ever find that out. I don't know. It's only important for
Well,
the
you're
cult.
just saying if she was 20 down one, then he stopped, they didn't bother with the other rest of them.
Right. And then the
Yeah.
rest of them can go back to their village or wherever they were, and then they could go get married because they hadn't been defiled. They were still virgins when they went back. So I don't know. Like I said, it only matters from a cultural perspective of what did the king do. Or, remember, they were not a godly people, the Persians. So, you know, did he say, well, I'm going to still, you know, get my jollies and I'm going to still have all the other, I want all 400. You brought them here, they're all mine. I'm thinking that probably not. Why would he want to take care of that many women if he didn't have to? If he got one that he was smitten with, then he could say to the rest, you're all dismissed. And they could go back and then they could live their lives and do what they wanted to. So, let's see. So somebody commented on Esther's life so far has been remarkable. She was the child of Jewish exiles who both died, and she was raised by a cousin in a foreign and often hostile land. She was taken by compulsion into the king's harem. She found favor with all who she met, and she was finally selected to be the queen of the realm. So we see it as God's hand. So by the way, so do the Jews. The Jews look at this. Esther, Queen Esther, was one of the famous people in Jewish history. And of course, we know they have the holiday of Purim, which comes from this, which we'll see later on in the book of what she did that made it so spectacular. And we know, because God had his hand in here, even though God's not mentioned in the book at all, that God had his hand in this, and that it wasn't an accident. It wasn't because of luck or anything like that, good fortune. One guy even writes, it wasn't even just because of her good looks or sparkling personality. I think it was, but I think that it was those good looks and personality that she was able to hone that God gave her. Listen, we all have in this room personalities. And we, some of the parts of our personality are good and some of our personality parts are not that good. But God created us all as individuals, and we can't expect, Fran to be the same as Mike, because you guys are different. So we all have those different parts of our personality. But Esther was chosen because it was part of God's plan, and she was groomed, so to speak, her whole life for this position, but not actively being groomed like, you're going to grow up to be the queen someday. It was just cousin taking care of his niece. I guess that's what it would be. So, and then it says in Psalm 75, verses 6 and 7, for exaltation comes neither from the east, nor from the west, nor from the south, but God is the judge. He puts down one and exalts another. So we know that God had his hand in this situation. So, and then the rest of the stuff that some of these people were pointing to was trying to give us some context in today's realm. And I don't always agree with what people say that we can learn from it. But I want you to just be aware that the point of the story of Esther also shows that God was working his plan even in a godless nation, right? There's no God. We notice there's no talk of the law. There's no talk of her Jewish heritage. Later on there is, but not now.
She's not part of that lineage.
Yeah.
She is.
Yes.
Oh, she is.
I believe so. I think I saw that. I'll look that back up to see which side of the lineage that she was on. She might have been. I think she was, but I'll get back to you on that. God did not make Ahasuerus drunk or make him demand that his queen present herself in an immodest way before the lords of the kingdom in this instance. So in other words, she didn't have to put what morals she may have had, aside to do what she did. But remember, there was a lot of drinking going on here, and a lot of other things that went on in this kingdom that were just not godly things that should have taken place. So, but yet we see that God triumphed throughout the whole situation. So at the end, she got the crown, and she got a feast, and she was shown off to the entire kingdom. And by the way, I think that he was so impressed with her that he said, I have to show her to my entire kingdom. And somewhere, being a guy, I would say somewhere in the back of my mind, the thought kept coming up that Vashti was probably still part of this harem. I don't think he banished her from the kingdom. And he probably said, I don't know what she's thinking now. She should have listened to me and done what I said, and I wouldn't have had to get rid of her, but I won out in the end. So that's the end of chapter 2. We got through chapter 2, but I don't know why I have a part 5. Oh no, we just finished up to there. We still have 19 and 20. So anyway, yeah, that's the end of that. there was one thing that I wanted you to see about, oh, here it is, the design of the book of Esther. So I read this part and I thought it was very interesting. If you back up and look at the book of Esther as a whole, you can see how precisely the story has been designed. The story is full of many moments of ironic reversal, but notice how the entire book is structured as one large reversal right down to the details. So let's take a look at the difference between the beginning and the end of the book and how it all comes together at the center chapter. Now, for someone to figure this out, like I don't have this kind of time to sit down and do all this, but somebody did it. The king's splendor, feast, and decree in chapter 1 corresponds to Mordecai's splendor, feast, and decrees in chapter 10. Okay? So there was things going on in chapter 1 that related to the things, almost the exact same thing with different people going on in chapter 10. Esther and Mordecai first saved the king in chapter 2. Remember, there's going to be a threat on his life. And in the end, they save all the Jewish people in chapter 9. So now we have 10 and 1, and then we have 2 and 9. Haman's elevation, edicts, and banquet with the king in chapter 3 are reversed by Mordecai's elevation, edicts, and banquet in chapter 8. Right? So it's pretty interesting. It's coming together in the middle. Also notice how Esther and Mordecai's 2 planning scenes, chapters 4 and 8, and Esther's 2 special banquets, chapters 5 and 7, form a frame around the greatest reversal in the whole story, and that's Haman's humiliation and Mordecai's elevation. And that happens right in the middle in chapter 6. So it's pretty interesting that the book has this correlation that goes from the last 2, or the first and the last, and each chapter coming in, and that the reversal, remember, we didn't get to this is a spoiler alert, that Haman thought, man, at this banquet, I'm going to be elevated to the top dog. And what did he get? He got the steak. And I'm not talking about a T-bone. He got killed in the way he was supposed to kill Mordecai. So it's very interesting to see that God has a little bit of that poetryistic thing going on, because that's how poetry is, right? Poetry has different verses, different kinds of poetry, interweaves throughout the story, and this book did just that. And never once did it mention the name of God, and never once did it mention Jehovah or anything related to the Jewish nation, except that she saved her people, and that was it. So I thought that was interesting as well. So anybody have any questions?